Summary of The Open Boat by Stephen Crane. The first scene of The Open Boat depicts four guys cramped into a lifeboat about the size of a bathtub when they are out on the stormy, steel gray sea off the coast of Florida. The four people who made it out of the shipwreck alive are the cook, the reporter, the oiler, and the captain of the now-sunk Commodore. The hurt captain gives orders while the cook gets the boat out of the water, and the reporter and the oiler, whose name is Billy, take turns pulling. The tiny rowboat has a hard time getting up on top of the huge waves, and it feels like every wave peak will be the one that flips the boat over. The sun rises, but you can only see it in the changing colors of the sea. The reporter and the cook are arguing as the sun rises. The cook says that they are getting close to the Mosquito Inlet Lighthouse, which has a safe house, so the men will be seen and saved quickly. The reporter tells him he's wrong, saying that safe places don't have staff, just emergency supplies. Life-saving sites, on the other hand, have both. The cook thinks that it might be a life-saving station after all, but no matter what, there is a team who will see them and save them. The oiler moans that they aren't even close yet, so there's no point in fighting. The men are glad that the wind from the land is pushing them closer to land. Even though they don't want to show it, most of them are hoping that they will be saved soon. I don't like being squished into such a small rowboat, though. The captain can't even swat the seagull off his head because he doesn't want to tip the boat over. For the same reason, the oiler and the reporter must be careful not to rock the boat as they switch places. The captain sees the lantern at Mosquito Inlet off in the distance. As the reporter works the oars, he wants to look over the horizon for the lighthouse, but can't take his eyes off the waves that are coming in. He finally sees the lighthouse, but it's so small it looks like a needle. The captain tells the men that they will get to land as long as the wind blows their way and the boat doesn't fill up with too much water. Lost at Sea has brought the four guys together in a way that makes them feel like brothers. The men always have respect for the boss and do what he says without question. Even though the writer doesn't trust people, he or she feels very close to these men. When the captain tells the cook and the reporter to use the captain's coat as a homemade sail, they do so. The boat speeds up. The tower in the distance gets bigger over time, and the men can finally make out a thin strip of land. The oiler and reporter have to keep pulling hard even after the wind dies down and the makeshift sail deflates. The narrator says that all the men had been too excited to eat or sleep for 2 days before the Commodore sank, which makes them feel even more tired now. The oiler is the most worn out because they worked back-to-back shifts in the engine room right before the ship sank. The captain tells the men in a mean voice to keep their strength up in case they have to swim to land. The captain can see the small piece of land better and knows it is a safe place to stay. The captain says that since the lighthouse is so high up, someone will see them and send help. The oiler says in a soft voice that the other lifeboats must not have made it to land because there would already be a search team looking for other people in the water. Even so, the men are still hoping that they will be saved quickly. He has 8 cigars in his coat pocket that he has forgotten about for a long time. 4 of them are wet, but the other 4 are dry. Someone finds 3 dry matches among their goods, so while they wait to be saved, the men smoke and drink from their water supply to rest. The captain sees that the house of safety looks empty after a while. The cook thinks it's odd that the people who are saving lives haven't seen them yet. The storyteller steps in and says that there isn't actually a life-saving station close. But the 4 men don't know this and instead start blaming the people who are saving lives for not being brave enough and having bad eyesight. The men are complaining when the captain tells them they need to save themselves while they still have the strength to do so. He tells the men to trade places where their loved ones live in case they don't all make it to land. The men are mad that they might drown and don't understand why the 7 mad gods who rule the sea would let them get so close to land if they were going to die. The lifeboat can't stay near the shore any longer because the waves are too big, so the oiler rows the boat out to sea. They are sure that someone has seen them by now, says one of the guys. Someone else suggests that the people who saved the lives may have seen the men before but thought they were just fishers. The tides and wind and waves push the rowboat in different directions that afternoon. It's still a turn-based system where the oiler and the reporter row. One man takes the oars, and the other lies in the bottom of the boat, getting wet from the thin layer of water. He is glad to be done pulling for now. The person writing this article thinks that sinking sounds calm, like sleeping on a big bed. Someone on the shore sees them and waves, which makes the men very happy because they know they'll finally be saved. A bath towel is in the rowboat, and there is a big stick bobbing next to them in the water. They use these to make a flag to wave back at the man. They also see a big car on the shore, which turns out to be an omnibus. They see that the man waving has a black flag in his hand, but then they realize it's just his coat that he's waving around. They argue about whether the man waving is telling them to go in a certain way, maybe to the closest life-saving station. In the end, they decide that the man is just saying hello to what he thinks are a group of fishers. At night, you can't see the shore. The men occasionally get wet from the spray from the water, but they still sleep well. This person writes in the dark while everyone else sleeps. He soon wants to be with the other guys after seeing a big shark swimming next to the boat. He or she adds that when a person sees how small he or she is in comparison to the vast world, that person is likely to become angry and then feel helpless. The guys on the raft have thought about nature's lack of care, but they haven't talked about it. The reporter remembers reading a song as a child about a soldier who was dying and wailing that he would never see his home country again. He held his chest with his left hand to stop himself from bleeding to death. When the reporter was a boy, he didn't feel sorry for the fighter, but now he does. The reporter sees a big wind tower on the beach in the morning and wonders if anyone climbs it to see the sea. He believes that the wind tower shows how nature doesn't care about people. The captain cuts off the reporter's thoughts and says, yes, their boat is going to sink soon. The men jump into the water. The reporter grabs a lifebelt with his left hand and holds it to his chest before he jumps. The writer is shocked by how cold the water is and wants to cry. When he looks around for his friends, he sees that the oiler is swimming quickly to land, far ahead of the others. The writer stops moving toward land because he or she is being pulled by a current. But soon, a big wave comes along and pulls him out of the river. He starts to worry that he might really die. The reporter sees what looks like a man saving lives running across the beach and quickly taking off his clothes. While the captain yells for the reporter to swim to the boat, the reporter thinks about how peaceful it would be to die. Suddenly, a big wave grabs the reporter, lifts him over the boat, and drops him into water up to his waist. His tiredness makes it impossible for him to stand, so he lets the waves crush him. The man saving lives, who is now nude, pulls the cook to land and quickly runs to the captain, who tells him to save the reporter first. As the man starts to pull the reporter out of the water, he is shocked to see the oiler lying face down in the shallow water with no movement. When the reporter finally gets to the shore, there are a lot of people there offering blankets, coffee, and clothes. He is no longer alive. It gets windy that night, and the sound of the ocean can be heard on land. The captain, the cook, and the reporter all feel like they can now understand what the sea is saying.
About the author. Stephen Crane was born on November 1, 1871. He was the 14th child and the youngest. Even though his father was a Methodist preacher, Crane didn't believe in God. His most famous work, The Open Boat, which talks about fate being random and makes connections to myths, shows that he didn't believe in God. Crane worked as a writer and author and lived in rundown flats with his friends for most of his life. He was an artist who was always hungry. After only one term, he quit Syracuse University and moved to New York City to follow his dream of becoming a journalist. His first book, Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, A Story of New York, came out in 1893 with very little money from him. It didn't sell very many copies, though. His second book, The Red Badge of Courage, did better when it came out in 1895. Crane got a job as a writer after this book came out, which also let him gather material for his own stories. After a fight with the New York cops over a prostitute in the winter of 1896, Crane left New York City. He went to Jacksonville, Florida, and got on a ship called the Commodore. His plan was to cover the Spanish-American War in Cuba. After that, on January 2, 1897, the ship sank. But Crane and 3 other people made it back to land in a small rowboat. A few days later, Crane's story of the shipwreck was published in the New York press. However, only 2 lines talked about his time in the lifeboat. Crane did write The Open Boat 5 months later, a fictional short story based on his life as an accident survivor on the open sea. Crane then moved to England with his partner and wrote a huge number of songs, short stories, articles, and books there. Crane died on June 5, 1900, at the age of 28.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.